As the host of Neutralize the Mama Trauma podcast, I am delighted to be able to bring you this podcast. My name is Wendy Lopez, and I would like to introduce myself to you. I specialize in helping people overcome their emotional blocks through different techniques, through emotional empowerment coaching and compassionate healing light facilitation. As a mom who has experienced narcissistic trauma, I help moms eradicate self doubt in order to regain self confidence to elevate their status both at home and at work. In our podcast, we discuss people's struggles, triumphs, and failures. We dive deeper into self love, self compassion, self acceptance, and mindful, holistic tips. In every episode, I hope that you can take a golden nugget of advice and apply it to the journey of motherhood in order to raise your level of awareness. Welcome to Neutralize the Mama Trauma podcast, where you find healing and creative mental thought advice from experts on past pain, narcissistic experiences, and trauma. Today, I have a special guest, and her name is Julia. She's a motherless mother with 2 teenage daughters and a single mother who has growth through 2 marriages completing. And she's an entrepreneur, registered psychotherapist, certified play therapist, co-owner of the Clarity Clinic therapy practice, creator of Hold, a family approach, and host of Paradigm Shift, a virtual parenting group. So today, I want you to be able to really intake what Julia has to share with us. And we're going to first share how she started, like what brought her here to where she's at, and what was her struggle and her trauma that she went through herself. So Julia, can you tell us how, what was going on in your life that it started this whole different way of living that you apply now in your life? Can you tell us about that?
Absolutely. Thanks, Wendy, for having me today. So just to jump in, really tying into your opener there of what was the trauma or impact that really affected me as a mom. And the biggest piece for me would have been losing my own mother. And that's why I chose to identify that in part of my bio. My mom passed away of cancer. She was my best friend and closest confidant. And she died when my first daughter was a year and a half. And my second child was actually due to be born on the 1-year anniversary of my mom's passing. So I thought, because I am in the therapy field, that I had kind of taken care of things and had sought some help and was thinking I had things under control until my second child was born. I only took a short leave of maternity before I went back to work, and very quickly postpartum tied in, depression tied in, and intense suicidal ideation, where I was driving over a big skyway bridge back and forth to work every day, and it was difficult for me each and every day to make the decision to cross the bridge and not drive off. So for me, that was a big, I want to say, an eye-opening piece to really investigate where I was in my life, that my mom had lived a very full life and was, obviously had some regrets at passing at a young age at 55. But I wanted to be able to have that same kind of impact on my children. So I knew that things needed to change. So I did make some big changes. They included things like not necessarily thinking them through and making good, wise choices, but I did do some therapy at that point. I made the decision to relocate. I also made a decision to end a marriage at that point, and relocate into a slower, different type of lifestyle for my girls and I. So we moved 2.5 hours north, to a smaller community from where I was, to kind of slow things down. and find it easier to try to balance that mom and working mom piece. I felt that I had that pretty well in hand.
Mhm.
But I think when when we're when I was a mom anyways, I don't want to speak for others. I really my girls were absolutely my everything.
Mhm.
And it was me and the bigger picture of my choices and my wellness on them, because I was really caught in the just day-to-day parenting cycle and making sure all their immediate needs were met,
Mhm.
rather than kind of take that step back and see what was I showing them, modeling for them, for how they would grow to become strong women. Um, so because I didn't take that step back, my second marriage um, initially was appeared to be a fine partnership, a positive partnership, but there were a lot of destructive patterns that came up in that relationship. Um, like gaslighting behaviors and verbal abuse that um, impacted me as a person, really again brought me back down into that level of depression. Um, and really made me, I want to say, isolate from everyone and lose who I was. Even as a mom, it was difficult to get out of bed. It was difficult.
Mhm.
um, when the girls were home, not in school, I was able to be like animated for them so that they would think everything was okay. But I had no life force at that point, no joy, other than in that role of I need to provide.
Right.
Um, and and that kind of waxed and waned for a lot of years. I didn't have a lot of energy to try to get out of the cycle, even though I knew what the cycle was.
Mhm.
Um,
Okay.
so I was educated in this field. Um, I worked at a women's shelter. So like I knew all of it and was very well educated, but was also very well versed in how to make up all the excuses about things. Um, and it was when actually COVID was a big instigator in this new cycle for my life that I had been doing some therapy and doing some of my own growth when I saw as my girls moved into those tween years that there wasn't that safe container, that safe connection with me. They couldn't open to me the way that I wanted them to be able to, the way that I had hoped for, because they didn't feel safe in the relationship because I wasn't open anymore. The relationship wasn't safe. So I want to say, kind of closed down my heart, but closed down that sense of attunement and attachment that needs to be present between a mother and child.
Mhm.
And with my early grief and then the complicated marital relationship, those pieces made it impossible for my girls to connect to me because I wasn't, I want to say, prepared to be vulnerable enough to allow anyone in. And that's when I started doing some deep work with therapists, but also I had an amazing friend who's a spiritual coach as well. And that helped me really moving towards making some of those bigger changes and seeing what I wanted as my relationship with my girls, how I wanted to show up for my girls. And then, as I said, that led to then COVID with me sharing with my partner that the marriage was over and that we needed to move on as a safety piece for my girls and I. And so that's been over 2 years ago now since that transition occurred. And, it hasn't been easy by any means. It's been a difficult journey. They've had a lot of healing collectively. We've had healing
Mhm.
to repair those pieces. And
Mhm.
I'd said to you, Wendy, before coming on, that was really a lot of the catalyst or motivation
Mhm.
uh, wanting to talk here with you today, but also in working towards creating a program because it was so hard for me to fight through this and not, I don't want to say that there weren't supports available, but that I had so much shame and embarrassment around not being able to mother, which should be so natural.
Mm-hmm.
But I wasn't able to do it because I had my own trauma and my own hurt. And then I felt, on top of that, so much shame about having those difficulties that I didn't feel I could open to anyone. So the program that I'm working on, or the parent group that I have here, is really about um, showing up in it like, yes, I'm, you know, educated and trained in working with children and working with families. But when I show up in that um, parent group, I'm showing up as a parent that's also fallible, that has this training, yet still made all these mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And that it's there to create that community, which aligns, I felt when we connected, aligns with the viewing that you have, is that through community and through sharing, we can reduce that stigma, that sense of shame, and really be able to step into our power and our gifts as women and as mothers.
Yes, yes, very beautiful. And I just want to say how grateful I am that you were able to be at some point present enough to realize the impact that you were having on your children. And I really like how you said about the attunement and attachment. So there was a point that there was a disattunement and disattachment, that you weren't available for your children. And sometimes it's hard for us as mothers to realize, because we can get so focused on ourselves and so focused in providing for our children, for what their needs are, versus being with our children. I feel there's a huge difference. And when we are going through our own personal, like you said, yours was the grief through death, through your mom, and then the relationship in your marriage. That those are two heavy, heavy things to carry as a mother, when the mom is internalizing everything and not being able to have a support system, to have an outlet.
Yeah.
Right. And so I just want you to share a little more on, was there anything specific that you saw, like with your children, that made you realize that, hey, this isn't healthy. I need to become healthier so then I can be more open with and available for my children? Was there a specific thing that happened that you noticed the unhealthiness that you were carrying forward to the children?
Absolutely. So I think one of my biggest pieces is that I'm a play therapist.
Mm-hmm.
So I work with and counsel children, and it's non-directive, which means I follow the kid's lead, and I'm there to hold that safe container, and children do what they need to do in the therapy session, and through that they're able to heal their deeper wounds and the root of their own traumas.
Mm-hmm.
And I had these amazing connections with these kids in the safe container of the four walls of the therapy room. And I was able to show up in that space as my truly authentic, loving, unguarded self, as I'd been trained to. But outside of those four walls, outside of that container, my children didn't attach to me and didn't interact with me
Mm.
the same way these children did.
Right, right.
And so here I am doing this work that is beautiful and rewarding, and talking to parents and giving them feedback about how much growth and change I've seen in their kiddo. And these are some things that they can try at home. And then sitting in it and kind of going, ah, this isn't really lining up as genuine,
Mm-hmm.
that I don't have this. And so it prompted a lot of deep talks. Like, and my girls were in their own therapy from quite young ages as well. Like, I knew that for them, that because I wasn't available, and I knew that as soon as my mom passed, that I wasn't at full capacity. It's been 8 years now. I'm there now. But I would say for the first 12 years, I wasn't close to being my full self.
Yes.
So it's not a short journey by any means. And so I knew that they needed help. So they had their own therapists. And then I had raised them because I was working in a women's shelter early on, that like have a voice. You can be safe with me. I'm not going to power over you. Tell me what you think. And then they'd start telling me that, like, I screwed up. I wasn't there. I'm the root of their attachment trauma, which of course makes sense because as the mother, you're everything.
Mm-hmm.
But when you talked about it's hard to hear that as a mom, it's so hard to take that in as a mom when you're already feeling shame.
Right.
And then your own child is basically saying, you're a screw up and you broke me.
Mm-hmm.
And to hold it in that therapeutic place and not go into defensive. Yeah, but I was doing the best I could. Yeah, but I just lost my mom. Yeah, but I tried to relocate. Yeah, but I thought I broke that pattern, but I actually repeated the pattern with another partner that was exactly the same. Yeah, but I'm trying to do my own stuff, but I'm actually just a human and I'm, fallible and falling apart and I don't know what to do. And yeah, I screwed you up.
Mm-hmm.
And what do I do now?
Mm-hmm.
And that journey was a pretty rocky one.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even want to say allowing, but learning, I guess, through my own work, more as a mom than as a therapist, because I knew how to do this in the playroom. I
Mm-hmm.
knew how to do this outside of my home. It was learning how to, I want to say, hold the anger and disappointment for my own children
Mm-hmm.
so that they could play out the hurts they had when they were little, when I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't available. Now, when they were teens, and I was more like capable of holding. Does
Mm-hmm.
that make sense?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that was, I think, sort of the hardest pieces, Wendy, was doing my own work enough to get out of the way of it and not go into defensive story. That
Mm-hmm.
I could hear their hurt and be able to go, yeah, you were 3 and I moved away for a new job. And, I told you what was happening, but you were 3, so you didn't really understand. So when mom was away and only saw you on weekends, that felt like I totally abandoned you.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I get that. Like, I can't obviously change it. There's
Mm-hmm.
no way to explain it. There's no point to. It's how it landed, right?
Right.
Um, so those are pieces that, like, as a parent, it's really hard to just go, yeah, I did that. And how do we repair it?
Mm-hmm.
Where do we go now? And I would say there's mixed results on that. And
Mm-hmm.
depending on the day and time of year in my household, there's times where we're really close. And I know overall we've done amazing work and growth, but I also know there's still layers of that hurt for them to uncover. So the same as it took me, those 12 plus years to work through my grief and feelings around my mother, it's going to be a similar process for them to let go of the mother that let them down and accept the mother they have now.
Mm, right, exactly. And that is a beautiful gift to give the children, that accepting the mother that they have now versus, and also accepting the mother they had then, right? Because children can get the perspective of, my mom wasn't there, she wasn't available, uh,
Mhm.
yet not knowing that mom didn't know how to be there. She didn't know how to be there for herself.
Yeah,
And it's almost expected moms to be able to be the knight in shining armor for her children, right? And
absolutely.
when mom doesn't know, she's not getting that. She's not getting that from the marriage. She's not getting that. You didn't have your support system anymore, which was your mom. She's not
Yeah.
receiving that. So, what would you say, or what's a tip that we can give moms that they can practice something practical so they
Yeah.
can receive for themselves something um, that you, with your expertise, can share with them that they can apply it on a daily basis, or something that they can go to be able to receive for themselves when they don't have a support system?
I think, and that's a great question, Randy. And it's something that I've reflected on and I'm still working on building into my life.
Mm-hmm.
So what I want to say is what pulled me out both times of that deep pit was finding things that brought me joy.
Okay.
Initially, it wasn't with my own kids. And that sounds crappy. And it's not that I didn't love them entirely, but there was conflict there. So it was hard.
Mm-hmm.
So I needed to get energy to feel motivated from something that, and for me, it was something I was good at and enjoyed. So I initially started
Mm-hmm.
uh, where I was, supporting their school with a reading program, right? So I went in and I was volunteering to help the behavioral class at their school, because that was my skill set, right? I worked with oppositional and challenging kids. That was who I was.
Mm-hmm.
So principal was more than happy to be like, hey, you got time? Awesome. I got some kids for you. And that fed my soul because at this point I'd stopped working. Like I was doing my master's degree. I was at home. I had no energy to do anything except
Mm-hmm.
my school and put on a fake face when my girls got home.
Right.
But doing that piece where I could feel those kids light up, I felt appreciated by the teachers because I was supporting them. I felt appreciated by the principal. I got involved in the student council or parent council, sorry, at the school. So it gave me purpose outside of being a mom because I felt, I don't know where your layer is of swearing on your show.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I felt like I was crap in the bed as a
Mm-hmm.
mom, right? Like I wasn't excelling there. So to find a way to like give myself some grace, I had to find something that I could excel at and feel proud of. And then from that place of accomplishment, I could turn back to those areas that were harder to step into
Mm-hmm.
from a stronger sense of who I was and what I'm capable of. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Rather than when if you feel like you're doing a crappy job or your kids are telling you you're doing a crappy job or your partner or your ex or everyone else is saying, you know, you're crap in the bed and you're doing a crappy job,
Mm-hmm.
that's not where you're going to find your strength to change it
Right.
because you're going to feel beat up and defeated. So
Right.
finding anything, like currently my things right now is I've recently joined a choir.
Mm-hmm.
Just because my girls are old enough, I don't need to drive them to see their dad on Sundays, like pick them up anymore. So I'm free. It's taken me like 6 years. I've known about this choir and wanted to be a part of it. But
Mm-hmm.
now I can because I don't have to sacrifice their needs, right? For my own, which is not a good choice as a mom. You need to
Mm-hmm.
have both,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
But that I've joined a choir, I've joined a yoga class. I'm like doing things to fuel that passion in me
Mm-hmm.
of things that make me feel good because when I feel good, I'm modeling to my girls, find passion in your life. Things
Right.
that make you feel good. Find connections because that's the other piece. Where do you build a support network? You find things that make you feel good. And likely there's going to be other people there that feel good.
Mm-hmm.
And then those are good people to get to know.
Beautiful. So in order for them to receive, being able to put themselves in places where they're appreciated, right? Like,
Absolutely.
so you volunteered your time working with kids. That's what brought you joy. So moms being able to put themselves in places where they are appreciated, so then they can increase that value of appreciation for themselves, which is true with what you're saying, Julia, as far as, if you're feeling like you can't get out of the bed, you're going to, and that's real. That moment is real. But what we're saying
Yeah.
is shift that moment, shift that energy to putting yourself in places where you're appreciated. So then you can start really seeing the appreciation of yourself. And life is crappy, right?
It definitely can be.
You you can be surrounded by people that don't appreciate you. It could be you might not have a terrible trauma, but you could be surrounded by people that just never appreciated you.
Yeah.
And that in itself is very hurtful to your self-esteem, who you are as a parent, as a mother, as an individual, as a woman, right?
Yeah.
So even shifting in that era of feeling the non-appreciation to appreciation for yourself, finding ways to be amongst that energy that would bring you that. So yeah, that's really, really important, really important. And like you said, once you are around that, you're going to be around that appreciation energy because they're appreciating what you do.
Mm-hmm. And they're doing similar things, right? Like for me, one of my core values is community, right? Being
Mm-hmm.
part of a collective, I want to say mission or value, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
that's core to who I am as a person. And that's where the volunteering was good. But also being a part of that parent council gave me purpose within the school. Then my kids were proud of me all of a sudden, not as necessarily a mom, but their mom was in the school, and
Yeah.
that was cool. And their mom was on the parent council, and that was cool. And then mom was available and had energy now because I'm already at the school to get involved and check into their classes and go on their field trips. And so that shifted that energy and dynamic a bit too. But it's, I think, figuring out, and whether you're pulled to church or whether you're pulled to community or whether you're pulled to creative arts, or like, it doesn't have to be groups. You might be drawn to quilting
Mm-hmm.
or to golfing or meditating in nature. It doesn't always have to be with other, but finding a way to deeply nourish you and your core values.
Right, right. So
And that helps you know what to pass too, right? What values do you want your children to have and
mm-hmm.
appreciate
I like that.
and show up with?
Yes, and it's so true. I like what you said about deeply core values. So when you are surrounded by situations and environments that you lose your own core value because our identity now becomes intertwined with someone else's, pulling back the reins and getting your core values back into front and center of mom's
Yeah,
life, right?
yeah.
Yeah, I like that. So, is there any tips that you want to tell moms before we share more about your group and how they can find you online? But is there more
Um,
something
yeah,
that
I
you
think
can offer
the
with
most
your person?
powerful thing, sorry, Wendy, the most powerful thing that I learned that helped me feel good enough was in psychology around attachment theory. There's a phrase called the good enough mother. All you need to be to have, healthy, well adjusted children is a mother that's good enough. So
Hmm.
when I meet with parents and when I'm like scolding and judging myself at times, I try to remember the idea of good enough. And what a good enough mother is someone who gets it right 30% of the time.
Mm,
That's all that's needed. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to be 90%. You don't even need to be 50%. 30% of the time showing up and attuning to your child in that moment and getting it right, 30% of the time is good enough. And
beautiful.
for me, that takes a lot of pressure off.
Right, right, right. That's beautiful. That is so powerful as well. And so how can our audience find you online?
I think the easiest way to find us would be on our website. So, so my clinic website. So my clinic is called Clarity Clinic. So it's Clarity Clinic spelled out .ca. We also have Facebook pages and Instagram pages that all link, but everything can link out through our main website page. And then the program, the Hold a Family approach, which is a combination of this parent group being in this safe place and having these kind of conversations like we've had today, Wendy, of being able to just show up and be real and genuine. That's part of that program, is having those type of real conversations. There's also a program that we tie into it that's called the Safe and Sound Protocol. So it's a listening program that really helps you show up in that genuine, safe attunement, right? That skill. And for me, I'd shut off for so long. So it's a really easy, I want to say easy because it's, some people find their self-talk gets too loud if they're doing mindfulness or meditation. But so it's a listening program, which can make that an easier way to get to that safe connection. So those two pieces, and then being able to do, those are virtual pieces. You don't need to be, I'm in Ontario, Canada. You don't need to be here to have access to those pieces. And you don't need to be within our local community to attend the parenting group. So it's something that I really want to help parents. Like, I'm not bound by locally. I really want parents to be able to understand kind of from a global perspective.
Right.
We just have to be good enough, but we have to heal and heal our inner children in order to heal our outer children.
Right.
And so that information about that program is also on our website, and people can access that through there, sign up virtually. They're all virtual programs, or reach out and ask for more information. My email address is julia@clarityclinic.ca.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Julia. I appreciate your presence, your wisdom, and your expertise. And I'm hoping that they reach out to you in finding out how they can work with you. It's so needed in our parenting. It's so needed for our own inner parenting as well. So I appreciate the work that you're doing.
Well, thank you for having me, Wendy. It was great talking today.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to listen to Neutralize the Mama Trauma podcast. If you haven't already, please hit the like and subscribe button so you don't miss any new episodes. It would also mean the world to me if you're able to take a moment and rate and review my podcast on how it was helpful to you. Also, please connect with me on my social media platforms. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you in the next episode.